Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Big East Rewind. I'm Chuck Everson, your 7-foot host from Villanova University, and my partner is not here tonight. Sonny is not with us. He is teaching a bunch of dental students at his alma mater at University Buffalo University, working with the kids in the dental school there, which is good for him. He does a lot of work with them, and it works out. But we're still in good shape. You know, we go to the bullpen, and these guys that I played with in '85, we always have each other's back. So it was one phone call, and this guy jumped at the chance to come on the show with me. My good pal, my buddy, my brother from Villanova, number 31 in your program, number one in your heart, the great Mark Plansky. How are you, Mark?
Chuck, you did a great job reading my intro. Thank you very much.
That's right. That's right. And hey, I appreciate you coming out and helping me with this, because this guy that we've got on today, Mark, is a great guy. We both know him pretty well, and we're going to have a lot of fun tonight for sure. So without any further ado, Mark, let me introduce to you our guest tonight, okay? He was a Philadelphia basketball lifer. He's been in this his whole life, from St. Joe's Prep, 24 years coaching up on Hawk Hill at St. Joe's. Went to the Elite Eight, was the Naismith Coach of the Year in 2004. He's been all over. He's been with Michigan, and now he's an analyst for Fox Sports. He's doing a great job. Philadelphia Sports Hall of Famer, Phil Martelli. How are you, Coach? How you doing?
Chuck, thank you. Mark, it is great to be with you.
Yeah, Coach, it's been a while, but let's just go right on record. One of the all-time great friends in the great city of Philadelphia, folks, Coach Martelli.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Great to catch you guys.
yeah, we've always had fun when we've been around you, Coach. You know, I remember my son's high school coach wanted to take the kids to camp, and they went to the St. Joe's camp when you were there. And I said to him, "What are you doing?" I said, "You know," I said, "That's like sending Derek Jeter's kids to Red Sox camp." And I said, "What the heck is?" So I go down to watch practice. I don't know if you remember this, and I call Eddie. Eddie was in town, and I call Eddie, and we both showed up. And you came down, and we were breaking chops back and forth with each other. But you came down and said, "Oh, to what do we owe this pleasure? We got the champs in town."
That's
and,
right.
and we had a good time, talking with you and some of your guys too. So it was a lot of fun. So, that said, let's jump in. You're a Philly guy, tried and true, born in media, right? Went to
No,
St.
I was actually born in Mount Clemens, Michigan. My father was in the Air Force. I was
Oh,
there
wow.
for 9 months, came back to Southwest Philly, and stayed in Southwest Philly until I was in the 6th grade. Moved to Delaware County, and went to school at St. Joe Prep, and then went to Widener in Chester,
Right.
and then started coaching. First coaching job was Cardinal O'Hara, right there on 320. JV team. Went back to Widener, played for the Division III National Championship at Widener as an assistant, and then got the head coaching job at Bishop Kenrick High School for 7 years. And then went to St. Joe's and was there 34 years. But Philadelphia is through and through, Chuck. There's no getting around it.
There's no more Philadelphia guy than you, Coach, in those circles, right? I mean, right from your whole life has been spent through Philly.
Yeah, there's a lot like me. There's a lot like me, and you know them, and they talk a lot.
That's true.
No, Chuck, I would say that this guy's one of one. I would disagree with that statement. So, Coach, correct me if I'm wrong, doing a little homework, because, I'm nervous. I'm on the big stage with Chuck Everson on Big East Rewind, so I had to do a little homework. All-time top couple assist leader at Wider, huh? I mean, I wouldn't have think passing. I really would not have.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I never. I was not a guy that looked to shoot a lot. I always passed. And you know where I got that, Mark, and you guys will appreciate this. When I was very young, 7th and 8th grade, the older guys in our neighborhood would pick sides. And if they needed a guy, I would play play with college guys and out of college guys. And I just remember them telling me, just don't turn the ball over. And so that's what I prided myself on. And then when we would play on the outdoor courts with no lights, they knew where there was a place to go play with lights. I get in the car and I might be the fifth guy, but I wasn't going to mess up the chance because back then people played winners and you had to sit for a couple games and they
And,
didn't want to sit.
and you know, obviously, if you're on the winning team, you kept playing. But the only other way to keep playing was if you made all the buckets against the winning team, they would draft you, or more importantly, pass the ball to everyone who was making all the
That's
shots,
it.
because you were always a coveted asset. Like, hey,
No,
look, Martelli, he likes to pass. We don't have to
yeah,
worry
no
about it.
question about that.
I mean, you play
Yeah,
with
everybody loves a guy that passes in pickup games. That's for sure.
Coach, you play with the Villanova guys in pickup. Nobody wanted to take the ball out of bounds after a made shot. No, you never get it back.
That's true.
Well,
That's true.
Joey Rogers should have been taking the ball out of bounds because he shouldn't have been shooting it.
That's funny.
So what
So-
what I, what I
Go
think
ahead,
is
Mark.
interesting, Chuck and I were talking about it after you went back to your alma mater and coached and went to that championship game. Tell us what you did after that and who was on your staff. I find that to be a really great springboard for your coaching career.
So when I was at Bishop Kenrick High School, I had all guys that had played there for the legendary Bud Gardler. And after a year, I had become very friendly with Geno Auriemma. And Geno came on staff. He was the JV coach. We were together. We ran it like a college program. I mean, we did everything that a college program would do back then. Scout in person, weight training. We didn't even know what we were doing, but we had a guy that would do the weight training, and we worked out. And we were together. I'm going to say 350 days a year. We were together doing something with basketball. And the first call that Debbie Ryan made when she was at the University of Virginia, she had a head coaching assistant coach position, first ever. She got the approval to hire a male. She called me. I said, "No, I'm good. I'm coaching high school basketball. I teach at a reform school. I taught at St. Gabe's Hall in Phoenixville. I'm good, but you should hire Geno." She did. She never interviewed him.
Oh, come on.
She never interviewed him. She knew him from working the camps and everything. And I'll never forget. There's a corner up in Norristown where he lived. I forget the name of the apartment. He had a 1-bedroom apartment, and he and his wife were married. And they loaded up a U-Haul. Chuck, the U-Haul was not a U-Haul. It was like the trailer that they put on the back of a car. That's all he had.
Okay.
That's all he had. And the last thing he said to me was, "Hey, if this doesn't work out after a year, I'll come back. And can I still be the JV coach with you?"
Wow.
And I think here he is.
The
So
rest is
I
history.
mean, it's
as
not
they
even
say.
it's not even like a conversation anymore. He's the greatest women's basketball coach of all time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
not even close. Was that the early 80s he went to Virginia? What year did he leave?
Yes. He went to, so that would have been 1979, 80. He went to Virginia.
I mean,
You- Go ahead, Mark.
I was just telling Chuck, Coach, I just think, I've seen you and Geno in action at Coaches versus Cancer golf tournaments. And, you'd have to be both the best salespeople on the planet to fake your relationship so well. I mean, Chuck, genuine Italian brotherhood family. And I never knew that story. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So you're still close today, I take it then, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've talked to him. When did they win? Monday night?
Yeah, the other night. Yeah.
Tuesday morning, I spoke to him in Tampa. I said, I'll leave it alone. But it's just remarkable. It's just absolutely remarkable. I remember, you guys will appreciate it. I remember the first year he was up there, he called me to tell me he had 3 campers. Yo, I got 3 camper registrations in the mail today. And I'm like, this is really, but he got his hands dirty. He always recruited coached and fundraised, and now he owns like half the state of Connecticut. At Mohegan Sun, he's got a bakery and he's got a food court, and he's got a little, I guess it's a wine bar. He's got a restaurant in Manchester named for his father, and he owns a bank.
Were you guys in that business together at one point? The restaurant bar business for a little
No,
while?
I owned a bar. I owned a bar in Norristown
Okay.
called Coach's Corner. Coach's
Oh,
Corner.
I've been there. I know
and
that place.
You know what? Now that you remind me of that, you two guys might owe me a little money.
What are
The
you
night of your
talking about?
championship, the night of your championship game, right?
Yeah.
All these lunatics from Norristown are in there. And I remember like the big deal was we gave them free hot dogs. And they're watching the game, they're watching the game, they're watching the game. Dwayne McClain goes down on the floor. You guys win the national championship. I look up and these dudes are gone. And I go, where are you guys going? They said, we're going to campus. I'm like, dear God, this is before like anybody knew about pedophilia or anything. I'm like, don't go to campus. You guys are too old to go to campus. They were down there. They were on Lancaster Avenue. And I'm thinking I'm going to have a big night with the, beers and the shots and all this other stuff. They're gone. They're on Lancaster Avenue.
Everybody, yeah, they had kegs in the middle of Lancaster Pike. It's unbelievable.
Was that your first year at St. Joe's in '85?
No, I wasn't there yet.
You weren't there yet.
I wasn't there yet. I went that next summer.
85, 86.
Yeah.
85, 86. Yeah. That was my freshman year. I mean, senior year, the following year after we won that. So so now that you're talking about St. Joe's, you got into St. Joe's. Talk about that rivalry. First of all, the Big Five. Let's get into that before we get into the Big Five. To me, is some of the greatest and most fun I've ever had playing basketball in my life. I loved double headers at the Palestra. The only thing we didn't like, I think Mark will vouch for me too, is the locker rooms were tiny. But other than that, it was an awesome place. You smell the popcorn when you walk in the place. And there were some games, man, though those games, those Big Five games were battles every single time. We had a tough time with Temple back in the day, with Granger Hall and Stansbury and some of those guys. And you guys I remember when my senior year we played you guys, and they spray painted Coach Masters' driveway beat Nova, and he had the Windsor shirt billboards, and they put mustaches on them and stuff. And all of a sudden, the Hawk comes out with the Wildcat's head. The poor mascot, they broke into his room, they stole his head, and they had it out on a broomstick, and he comes running onto the court. And there was no way in hell we were beating you guys that night. And your guys shaved their heads, like Mo Martin and
Jeff
those
Arnold.
guys all shaved their heads. So talk about that rivalry and the Big Five, if you would.
Here's what I always appreciated from when I was a young kid going to the Palestra and watching the game. This is what captured me about the Big Five was the noise.
Yeah.
Some places, like think about where you guys have been, even following the team, because I know you closely follow the teams. And you go on the road, let's say at Providence, and Providence scores and there's this roar. And Villanova scores and there's a little bit of a clap. In the Palestra, on every single basket, there's noise. That's what made it so special to me. And when you could walk in and you couldn't be neutral, you would walk in and you would say, okay, from that section over, halfway around is the blue and the white. And on this side is the maroon and the gray, or the red, or the cherry and the white. The whole place was half and half. And when I was growing up and we would go down there, you would be on the trolley going to the game. I was in 5th or 6th grade. And the guy would say, okay, who are you rooting for? And you couldn't change. And you had to go there and follow your team. That's one. Chuck, the other thing, and when it broke apart and they stopped playing all the time, and I think even in today's world, we've lost this. Playing against you was like playing against your brother or your next door neighbor. And I don't care what it is. You want it to be stickball, it's stickball. It's wiffle ball, it's wiffle ball. Touch football or whatever it is. And what you did was you competed because no one wants to lose to their brother.
Right.
Right? You want to beat your brother. And then at the end, you want to talk your trash and all this other stuff. But here's what the deal was. Don't anybody come in here and talk about the rest of us. Don't come in here and tell us, like, oh, Villanova's not really in this. Stop all that nonsense. That you're talking about us when you talk about them. No one could talk about us. And that's the thing that got everybody. All over the country, when coaches would say, you dudes do what? Oh, no. Yeah, we play against each other. And for that 40 minutes, it's nutty. I said,
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee it. Think about Rolly Massimino's relationship with Don DeJulia's handicapped son, Chris DeJulia. That doesn't happen anywhere else because other places it's like the coach and you got to be Carolina and you got to be no. In Philadelphia, we compete, and then at the end of it, we'll talk a lot of trash, but don't anybody come in here and talk about any of us.
Yeah, that's really well said, Coach, because I remember playing in the Sunny Hill League, right? So now you're down in Philadelphia, you're playing in playgrounds all summer long against all the guys that you're going to war with, and you couldn't wait. You knew who was good, and you knew who was tough, more importantly. So you couldn't wait to team up. We, like Chuck will tell you, we very seldomly picked our guys on those teams.
Right.
And more impressively when we went to 5-star camp, right? You go to 5-star camp as a high school kid, and you would end up hearing about the Big Five. And to your point, every coach never recruited against another Big Five coach. Like
Exactly.
Coach never recruited against Temple, St. Joe's, LaSalle, UPenn. Never. He recruited against everybody else. But where you going, Plansky? I'm thinking about playing at St. Joe's. That's a good program. Where you going, Plansky? I'm thinking about playing at Boston College. Why in the world would you go to BC? You got to be kidding.
Right.
Right, Chuck? I mean, that's what happened.
Yep.
I'll take you guys back to a scene that I'll never forget. LaSalle and St. Joe's recruiting the hell out of Lionel Simmons as we should have.
Right.
He came to the LaSalle St. Joe game the last week of the season in the Palestra at half court. For the first half, he sat on the LaSalle side. At halftime, he switched over and sat on the St. Joe side.
How great is that?
I mean, come on.
That doesn't happen anywhere, Coach.
No.
That's unbelievable.
Coach, I would love to hear your viewpoint of St. Joe's Villanova rivalry because it's the holy war. When Chuck and I come in as freshmen, you hear about it from the upperclassmen. You hear about it from Coach Massimino. Of course, Coach was Chuck Daly's assistant at Penn. He had great lineage and the great coaches of St. Joe's, Jack Ramsey, Jim Lyman, Phil Martelli, Jim Boyle, just unbelievable lineage of great coaches. And you don't really understand it until you step on the court on the Palestra your freshman year. And then by your senior year, you fully embrace it and you've already talked to the underclassmen. So our take on it was, we don't like these guys. All right. They don't play in the Big East. We think we're better. They think they're better. We cannot lose to these guys. And I was telling Chuck earlier, before we all jumped on here, in my 4 years, we were 2-2 against St. Joe's, 84-88. No game was won or lost by more than 2 points. One game was in overtime. One game was in double overtime. It just didn't matter.
And Mark, what I always thought about that rivalry was this is really you're representing a guy in Havertown who's married to a St. Joe girl, whose parents are a legacy at St. Joe's, and they're gonna and you felt that. You knew you were playing for more than just the Atlantic 10 or more than just the Big East. And I always described it. It was a game and a half. It was never a game. It never felt like one game. It was always Uh, first thing you look for on your schedule, there it is. And then you kind of looked and bridged how it went around it. And I wholeheartedly believe that as you took off, it was never an embarrassment to say we're trying to get where they are, right? And whether it's the Big East and the television, like think about it, you guys had television in the Big East way before the Atlantic 10 had television. That was a big deal. But if I boiled that game down, it's the households. It's the guys in business, right? 3 guys working at Broad and Chestnut, and they're all in finance. And one guy went to St. Joe, and one guy went to Villanova, and the third guy's just going to egg it on because that's what we do in Philadelphia.
Right.
You know, he's going to make sure that there's a wager, a friendly wager, and there's a lot of. They missed that today because it was built up. You know, those games were sprinkled in. Could be I said to somebody the other day, we used to play Saturday nights against Penn. Didn't matter the records. Saturday night in January at Penn. Half the building Penn, half the building St. Joe. The Villanova. I thought it was really cool even when we went to campus to say, you mean those are the seats all the way up there? But it was more than a conference game too. Like I think your competitions against Georgetown, there was still this idea that you were a road team or you were a home team. When you played in Philadelphia, you were a Philadelphia team playing a Philadelphia team.
What was the genesis of when that first started? Do you know the history of how that all became the Big Five?
No, I don't know. I know that the athletic directors got together and said, we're killing ourselves because we're not drawing big numbers, but they were playing at the same time, which they do now, which is a shame. They were playing at the same time, and they weren't like generating this interest. And in 1956, the 5 athletic directors got together and said, what if we did this? And what if we started this competition and we used, they want at a time, Chuck, they used Convention Hall. That was eventually knocked down for the hospital for Penn. But Convention Hall, maybe when you guys played, LaSalle even played their home games at Convention Hall for a little bit. Yeah. I actually saw Wilt Chamberlain and the 66-67 Sixers play a world championship game in the old Convention Hall against Rick Barry and the San Francisco Warriors, not Golden State. But that they wanted to get together. And Chuck, the other thing that they did that was today would be ingenious was now dealing with no TV, they were going to play on Wednesday and Saturday. So if you're the viewing public, you don't have to wonder. Right? TV changed all that, changed the game times and moved all, like.
But I tell you what, Coach, you have to give the ADs and the presidents of the Big 5 schools back then a ton of credit because, look, Big East Rewind is national, international viewership. We all know that. I'm coming from Boston. They have this little tournament called the Bean Pot up here. And ever since I was in high school in the 70s, they were trying to mimic that on the basketball court. And there were some pretty good teams up here in the 70s. And not one of them wanted to play against each other in basketball because everyone said the same thing. There's no upside. Like, there's just no upside. We're going to beat each other up. We're going to get our losses. We're all going to lose. And then we'd rather go play somebody else out of the city. And then the hockey stuck to it. Bean Pot's one of the best tournaments, but it still can't hold a candle to Big 5 basketball.
No, and the number of times over the years, somebody would say, could you just sit down and show me how it's done? And
you can't duplicate it. There's no way.
You can't. And so because both you guys are so philanthropic, there is no Coaches versus Cancer in Philadelphia without the Big 5. 100%. Right? If you don't have the Big 5, then you might have 6 schools going off and going, well, I could do this much or I could do that much. But Mark, you know it because you're there. Like when they publish this thing and they say Boeheim's the leading fundraiser, I'm like, no. We'll take care of that. You know, we want to take care of that. And how did we take care of it? All 6 went to the table, schools, development offices, donors. Like you go to that table because it's bigger. Just like Big 5 basketball is bigger than any one school, Coaches versus Cancer in Philadelphia is bigger than any one school.
That's an excellent point, Chuck. He's being very, very humble. You know, Coach Martelli and Coach Dunphy have led the Philadelphia Charge for years. And if you don't mind me saying, Coach, year over year, Philadelphia region is the #1 revenue provider for the American Cancer Society and Coaches versus Cancer. It's not even close. I'll call Coach Boeheim right now and make sure he knows.
Thank you.
Coach, was that something did that affect? I mean, cancer affects all of us some way, shape, or form. Okay. But how did you get involved with the Coaches versus Cancer? Was it something that happened to you, or was it something for your family, or was it just something that was near and dear to you?
I'll start with this. I'll say this in like a tongue-in-cheek way. I think coaches are overrated. Like I'd much rather know the person and say,
Yeah.
I'm going to judge him on the person that he is rather than the coach that he is. But I always saw coaching this way, Chuck. You are a representative of your school. You are a representative of your school. You are to coach your team, recruit your future teams, and then go out in the public as much as you can and make sure that you present your school in a positive light. So that's the backdrop. NCAA puts out a magazine. Top 100 schools fundraising when it used to be make a 3.
Right.
Chuck, you and I wouldn't know it. Mark
Mark
would have
made a
raised a
few,
lot of money
yeah.
making 3s.
Yeah.
Make a 3, we donate. I have this magazine in front of me. I'm going, not one school in here. Not one Philadelphia school in the top 100. This is nonsense. I call Fran Dunphy. He's at Penn at the time. I go, Dunph, you realize there's not one school top 1? I know we can do this. And then I became very, very friendly with Jim Boeheim, and he would let you know year after year, this is what I do. This is what I do. This. And I said, Dunph, come on, let's do this. Let's get the other coaches. And everybody jumped in, and we started with a breakfast and a golf outing and a gala school initiative program. And it's over $20 million raised just in Philadelphia. But it's not enough. It's just not enough because, as you said, Chuck, everybody's impacted. And the way I look at cancer is I see cancer as a bully. So they walk around the schoolyard, they walk around the playground, and they smack whoever they want. It doesn't matter to them. Male, female, black, white, Boston, Philly, Long Island. It doesn't matter where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
It does not discriminate. So the only way to fight a bully is to go after it and try to crush it. Not beat it, but try to crush it. And all of us are doing this. We're going to get to that day. And I've always said this. Somebody has that magic dollar. It's not $100. Doesn't have to be $1,000. Somebody has that magic dollar where we're going to be able to go on all these podcasts and say we are cancer free.
And I remember talking to Coach Martelli, Chuck, about that exact sentiment. You never know when, you never know which dollar, which is why Coach turns over every rock. And I'm going to tell a quick story. We have a mutual friend, Mark Hughes, who also grew up in the West Philadelphia area. And he had a buddy out in the Harleysville, Pennsylvania area that came down with cancer. And so Mark knew that I was involved in Coaches versus Cancer. He said, do you think there's anywhere Coach Martelli would come out and just, say a few words? Chuck, he was the first guy there. He welcomed everyone at the golf tournament. He gave a quick speech as he just did. He waited for everybody to come back in around, said thank you. And then lo and behold, unfortunately, as we all said, Mark's dad passed recently, a couple of years ago, with cancer. And who was the first guy to text Mark Hughes? This guy. And you can't make it up. That's why you and Dunph have been so successful. And, my dad passed when he was 50 years old with lymphoma. And that's one of the reasons why I'm involved. But one of the best things I found with Coaches versus Cancer, Chuck, was Phil Martelli, was Jim Boeheim, was Fran Dunphy, and everyone else involved who just as Coach said, genuinely wanted to know how the person was doing. We'll talk about coaching and playing later, and that's what makes the organization and you guys in Philadelphia in particular phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Mark and I were talking about it prior to you coming on with us, and you know, he's got nothing but great things to say, and you know, about the whole thing. And you guys do a lot of different events too, with the coincide with that stuff, right, Mark? Didn't you have some golf stuff and some
Coach said
banquets?
the Philly basket gala was great. We honored Coach Member of the Year. We honored Rolly Massimino. That was
Yes.
outstanding. We've done a number of things, and all of them are great. And you know, it's just amazing. But you know, away from that, Coach, what's interesting is you mentioned all these Big Five teams. We have an idea. Chuck and I have an idea on how Villanova recruited against St. Joe's. How did you grab Philadelphia kids recruiting against everything you said earlier about TV, ESPN, the package that the Big East had? How come they all kept coming to St. Joe's and causing us headaches year after year?
I really tried to make recruiting personal. I wanted it to be about me. So like if they looked up and they were going to see me. And I would often say to them, uh, I would say to them, if I give you this much attention and you don't play for me, what do you think it's going to be like when you play for me? And when you do, how about when it doesn't go your way? Right? Do you think? And I wasn't talking about anybody else. I just knew that I'm not going to turn my back on you because you shot 3 for 16. I can't. I can't. But that idea of, I always appreciated making recruiting personal. And also I sold dreams. I mean, I said to Jameer Nelson, he was 5'10", came from part of the Delaware Valley where people didn't go to college. And I said to him, I think that if you come here, you'll be the greatest guard to ever play in the school's history. And I think you'll play in the NBA. Now, I told other kids that it didn't work out, but that's what I wanted them to believe. I wanted them every day to believe this, Mark. I'm going to work with you to become a better person, to become a better student, and to become a better player. I'll give you everything that I have. Will you do the same for me? And then I'm going to surround you with like-minded people because you guys know this. Championships live forever. And the pursuit of championships is worth all the sacrifices. Like all the summers, instead of going home, you guys stayed on Lancaster Avenue.
Oh
And
yeah.
you got up early and they ran you on the track and they, you know, like, think about today. Today we're allowed to start practice on June 1st.
Yeah. It was always October 15th, right?
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. That's right. So talk about that magical season 2004. I mean, you guys had some team, you went, you know, went to the Elite Eight. You had you know, Nelson, you had Delonte West, you had who who am I Dwayne Jones. You had a hell of a team. Talk about putting
Undefeated
that all
regular
together.
season. Undefeated regular season.
Yeah, it was
And that's amazing.
unbelievable.
And like, again, I'm not, but we were 27-0. We had 5 games decided by 10 points or less when we were 27-0. It was just, it was, they did everything. They did everything as a group led by Jameer, but they did everything. Like if it was a day off, it was a day off.
Right.
If it was a weight training session, it was a weight training session. And we never, ever complained about what we didn't have. I mean, think about in today's world, the way they live now. I mean, we went commercial flights or long bus rides or
Yeah.
the only adjustment that I ever made was at the end of the year, Mark, up near you, we went to UMass. I'm almost sure Lapp was the coach. We went to UMass. And then our next game was at Rhode Island. I said, well, we won't go back because it's too frenzied. So we were 25-0. We practiced at Springfield College.
Sure.
We practiced at Springfield College before we went up to Rhode Island. And we did just didn't know. We didn't think to be entitled. The locker room was small, the offices were small, but out on the court were five dudes that just played. 12 of the 13 guys played somewhere in this world professionally.
Wow.
And my only, in the back of my mind, this is the only thing I'm not, I hope that they understood what they did. Because I would drive down the street and somebody could recognize me in the car and they would pull over and just say, I can't tell you how much enjoyment. And that was across the board. You know, I can't tell you how many times, and you guys heard the same thing along the way. Listen, I'm a Villanova grad, but
Yep.
right, they tell you that, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. And the same was true with Jay's teams. When people would say to me, well, what do you think? And I'd be like, well, first of all, he's a friend of mine, right?
Yeah.
Second of all, they're us. They're all of us. Like, you don't get joy out of how they're playing the game. Stop. Stop. Like,
Coach, I remember in that magical run that year you had, I was working on Wall Street up here in Boston, and you didn't have a bigger fan than Mark Plansky that whole run. And people would look at me because, you know, Chuck and I might wear our championship rings as much as we possibly can. And all I was doing was wearing maroon and gray and cheering for you guys. That's all I was doing, as we talked earlier. And, you know, it was any bad call against you was just the worst call I've ever seen. You know, it was spectacular. And I'll never forget, you know, one of the years that the 2 years that Coach Wright won, you got Big Five Coach of the Year. I was there, and you just
Right.
graciously handed the trophy. Said, "What am I doing?" And you had a sticky, and you wrote Jay Wright's name, put a sticky on the
That's
trophy.
right. I was there for that too. I remember that.
yep.
And that's just
Yeah.
the camaraderie and the brotherhood of the Big Five, which is amazing.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing that was wild about that group, coach, is only 6 times this happened. And the last time that this happened, it was you and Jameer got coach of the year, national coach of the year, and player of the year on the same team. That's only happened 6 times. That talk to us a little bit about Jameer and what kind of kid he was, what kind of guy he was when he was playing for you, and you know how the relationships were with him and some of the other guys on that team. Because you can't do anything unless you're close knit. I mean, you mentioned it a little bit.
He played at the legendary Chester High School. Chester High School has won the most state championships in that division in the state. It's down and out area. And his high school coach came when he was in the ninth grade and said, I have a kid and maybe not. And it really, the guy was looking for camp t-shirts. I gave him some shirts and they went about their business. I was in the office. They were playing at Villanova. They were playing against Pennsbury High School that maybe had like Lavoy Allen, some Dalton Pepper was on that team. And I said to the coaches, I'm going to go up and watch him play. And they told me he's too small. Don't waste your time. And I went up there and he dominated the first half. And they win the district championship and they're all running around the court. And this was the first sign to me that this was way different. This was way different. In all of this euphoria, running around, hugging, and people on the court and the whole bit, this 15-year-old kid went and got his father and brought his father over. He said, Dad, I want you to meet Coach Martelli. I'm like, that's just, and that's how he carried himself. He carried himself just older. And when he came, this idea of being driven, because he was being told, well, you're small, but after 3 games, Don DeJulia, the great Don DeJulia, would start to say to people, he's going to be among the greatest guards. And I would always correct him and say, I think he's going to be the greatest player that we've ever had. And it all had to do with work ethic and leadership and truly love. Like I would say he's the first young guy where he would end a conversation with me and say, Coach, man, I love you. And you're like, hmm. And he had a remarkable, his mother and father were not together, but they were together on raising him. He had a remarkable surroundings in Chester where, you have a chance of not making it out. They knew he was going to make it out and never wavered. I had players earlier that were good, but they got caught up. All of a sudden they had it, and I don't mean illegally, but they had to have a car. And I'm like, you don't need a car. Like, you really don't. You get anywhere you want in Philadelphia. It's one of the students or whatever. But his mental far exceeded his game, and he was that cliche. Much better person than he was a player, and even today he's a general manager in the G League. And there's certainly not 2 days that go where I don't speak to him. It was, I think that all of us that coach, for once in your life, you want someone like that, because he made me a better person just being around him.
And just to your point, Coach, to be able to use Jameer as an anchor for that locker room, right? So, I mean, what you just testified was character. You didn't say anything about his skill. You said character, work ethic, and a quality of a human being. Then you went out and, I mean, you had talented teams before and after, but then you went out and you just found that combination of guys in 2004 that made it special. I want to pivot and go 15 years later. I had the honor and privilege of doing a game in February of 2019 at your home court on national TV for ESPN. Folks didn't realize that on Friday nights, that was a Friday night. NBA is ESPN Friday night. There's only 2 college games played on Friday nights on ESPN. And we had the first game at 7:00, and it was the week your father passed. And we're talking about family. And everyone that knows Phil Martelli knows how close your extended family is. And everyone that knows Coach Martelli knows who sat right behind every practice, right behind every game, behind the bench was Pops. And I want you to take it from here, but I remember coming into your office the day of the game, right, a couple hours before the game, and just was genuinely concerned as a friend, how are you doing? Because you're playing, your dad's funeral was the next day, if I am correct. And you told me that you usually took some downtime, took a nap between pregame meal and getting ready for the game, and you couldn't, understandably, and you wrote your dad's eulogy that evening.
Yeah,
I
that
mean, and then I interviewed him. We had 10 minutes, Chuck. So folks, they were 10-point underdogs against Travis Ford's St. Louis team. They won by 30. Pops was up there blocking every shot. You guys didn't miss more than 2 shots of your first 20. We had 10 minutes to kill. And at half court, ESPN comes to me live. I asked Coach the exact same question I just asked him, and it was the best 8-minute interview I've ever had. So I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
Well, my father, the day I got the St. Joe job, my father retired from his job at DuPont. He was not an assistant chemist. He was a chemist assistant, right? So almost like Dwight Schrute in the Office. He was the chemist assistant, never missed a day of work, but he would plan his schedule. Never missed a high school game, never missed a college game. When I was playing in college at Widener, was a gas shortage. He would drive to Chester and get on the team bus, sit in the back, didn't say a word to anybody. And so when I got this job, he retired. And he came to every practice and he came to every game, home and away. And if we had a 5 a.m. wake up in St. Louis to fly back on a 6 o'clock flight so that they could go to class, he was up there at 5 o'clock. He was in every pregame meal, every film session. And he waited after every game to thank everybody, every manager, he thanked everybody. So when he passed away, I told everybody and said, I got to wrap my head around today. and we were bumping along right then. We weren't playing very well. And I talked to my wife, talked to my sisters. They said, well, he would want it like not interrupt the schedule because of people that would want to come and there. So why don't we plan it around um, after a game? And this looks like a game because it was a Friday night game. You could do Saturday and do the whole thing in one day. And I said, okay, I could go with that. And I went back and forth. And I think the school, Mark and Chuck, I think the school put Joe Lenardi on me because Joe would be calling me and saying, you can't do this. There's no way you can do this. And I'd be like, I think you're right. And then I would flip. And I went to the 2 days of prep, but Dave Duda had done the scout. So he kind of ran everything. And I said to them, I can do this. I can do it. And then if you remember, and because you were part of it, right when the ball was going to go in the air, they did a tribute to my father on the board. They did this tribute.
Hello?
And then I realized maybe I can't do this. So Travis Ford sent his entire team down to greet me before that game started. And we did. I really do think we made 18 out of 20 shots to start the game. And it was never a game. And they were the best team in the league.
They were the best team in the league. You were definitely 10+ point underdogs. I had done a bunch of games in St. Louis with Travis, so they had some great talent. And we opened up that 7 p.m. tip live with no words. The broadcasters said nothing. We just came on with ESPN Productions did a phenomenal 30, 60-second cut, highlights of yourself and your dad and tribute. And I have never heard an arena just express so much love with applause for so long. To your point, I don't know how you gathered yourself and composed yourself to have those guys miss 2 out of 20 shots in the first 5 minutes.
So, and I remember the post game, and they gave me the ball, and I gave it to my sisters, and that ball was at my father's funeral. So that was really cool. And then I have to share this with you because I just got chills. It was only last Thursday, right? Last Thursday, they introduced my son as the new coach at VCU. So at VCU, the visiting team is further down, and that's where they had his family, our family sitting while he was speaking. And Mark, as I looked up to their scoreboard above the one end zone, was a picture of my son. When we had gone to VCU that year, 5 weeks, 6 weeks after my father passed away, my father's picture was up there. And when I looked up, I just said a quiet prayer to my father and said, all right, I got you. I know you're here.
That's amazing.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, and let's talk about your son. I was talking to Chuck before that. I mean, congrats. I know his career and how qualified he is. But here's the question I had to ask: does he listen to Pops? Does he listen to you? He
No X's and O's.
probably listen to Pops. Does he listen to you?
No, I do no X's and O's. None. I don't do it. I never have. What I do is when I watch the games, Mark, I might call and I'll say, yo, you might want to check on, one of your kids. He was out of sorts, whether it was the rotations or he didn't get, or something's going on. Just check with that. Just that's it. That's the only thing that I talk about. And this run that they went on, I saw the Bryant semifinal game. I saw their final game, saw their NCAA game. And I talk to myself a lot, but I never talk to him. And the fact that he has stated that what he wanted to be was the best teammate, that, you know what, I said to my wife, we did right, because he understands that this is really not about him. It is about the teammate that he is. So, and now he's Now he's in that lead ship in that Atlantic 10. So
which has proven to be a phenomenal springboard for every single coach that has come through VCU
Yeah.
in Virginia. So, I mean, I'm guessing you're obviously proud of him, but you're pretty psyched about the position he's in now.
well, I'm really excited. And then just I'm just reading. I just got off a treadmill and grabbed the phone, and I knew he was there, but they just named my other son the associate head coach.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're in there together.
One-stop
That's
traffic.
awesome. Oh,
Perfect.
that's great news, man. Fantastic. Congratulations for that. I was just going to ask you where he was going to be, and you answered that without even me asking. So
And
pretty cool.
it's
That's so you'll be traveling down to Virginia a lot for games, hopefully, right?
I should be, yes. And then my grandson will be in 10th grade, so they're going to find a good school. He played in Massachusetts this year at Bishop Feehan High School.
Sure.
So he was a ninth grader, played ninth grade ball, and he's got the bug. So
Did he enjoy his time at Bryant? That's
he
where
loved it.
that's where my daughter Kat played, and she loved it there. The university, it's so nice there.
But Chuck, you know what blew me away? And when this thing was starting to go fast track with VCU, I was like, man, those people are so nice.
Yeah,
And I appreciated the fact, and you guys would appreciate it as fathers, the people coming up to me and saying, he's a wonderful guy. I don't need to hear about his coaching. Like, you don't have to, like, there's a lot of dudes out there that can coach. That doesn't mean there are people that you want to be around all the time. But for them to say what a wonderful person he was, that touched me. And I told him at the end, like, you have to do this. There were other schools that he talked to, and he just said they don't excite me, they don't move me. And I'm like, then you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. Like, you sacrifice some money and comfort for now, but if you're at a place that you love and they love you, don't trade that for anything. But then VCU was just different because Ed McLaughlin, their AD, was the AD at Niagara when my son was an assistant. So they'd been around each other for 20 years. And it's VCU. Not that he's looking to jump anywhere, but man, the world opens up from there.
yeah, sure does, sure does. So let me ask you this: with the way the environment is now in college basketball, and in college sports in general, what are some of the challenges you think he'll face at VCU? An Atlantic 10 school. It's Do you think it's going to be one of those things that as soon as they start to get good, some of the other schools might start poaching on the portal, or what are your thoughts on that?
Big picture for them. Uh, big picture for them is that they will not get outspent. Right? Chuck, they don't see Dayton, George Washington, LaSalle as their competition. They see NC State, they see Vanderbilt, they see Miami. That's who they see competing against. So facilities second to none. Game
Yeah,
experience.
campus is nice. I've been there.
Yeah.
We played a bunch of AAU stuff down there.
Yeah, second to none the facility, second to none the game experience, second to none the support staff, and now second to none money. Now, are they going to be able to spend like a football team? No,
No. Yeah.
no. But they're already opted in. Every kid's starting with $300,000 because they don't have football. So that opt-in money is going to go to men's and women's basketball and baseball. They're going to make a big push in baseball. Here are not concerns, but here are things that I'm talking to him about. He now has 9 full-time people working for him. He has to make sure that he has job delineation. He has to make sure that all of them feel like they can come to him with an idea, a suggestion. I don't want anybody there to be thinking they're working for him. They're all working for VCU, and they're working with him. He's really good at that, and that will continue. I've told him this take his time because he would want to go speeding in terms of being philanthropic and being involved in the community. Right now, focus on your team and your family, and then we can branch out into the community. He knows the Atlantic 10 because he was on our bench. Is it a challenge? Yes. I think the biggest deal for those schools, Mark and Chuck, right now is how to figure out where they fit in scheduling. The secret sauce has been found by the power schools, right? And if you look at who they play in the non-conference, they're not playing A10 schools. They're really not playing Big East schools. They're playing other power conferences. So you're seeing Vanderbilt play Northwestern. Well, where'd that come from? Well, it's because they have the secret sauce. And the more they play up, it leaves teams like VCU. It leaves teams like, I'll use DePaul. Like DePaul's trying to build their way up. It leaves them out because they don't want too many teams at that party. You know, and if they could hijack the tournament further, they're going to hijack the tournament further. It's just the way it is now. I want him to be calm and to not be out there fighting, you know, like don't be fighting the windmills like you're Don Quixote all the time. Focus on being great in your bubble.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's a challenge for any team right now, the way it looks, you know. Them opening up the portal in the middle of March Madness, to me, was madness. I mean, you know, they did it the same thing in the football and the bowl games and stuff like that too. So they'll figure it out eventually, hopefully. Otherwise, it'll be.
They said the same today to somebody
Yeah,
from the NCAA.
unbelievable. So, all right, we're getting close to the end here, Coach. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna throw a name out at you, and I want you to give me a story about that guy because these will be people that you are close to that you know. Okay. Coach Mass.
I'm going to tell you one that I don't think either of you know this one. All right, so I'm going to go all the way back. My wife was an assistant coach at Villanova prior to Harry being the coach.
Oh,
A
wow.
woman by the name of Joan King was the coach. Judy was an assistant because of the whole Immaculata thing. She worked during the day at a bank. She coached at Villanova. Rolly was unbelievable. Unbelievable to Judy and to everybody. He used to invite, in fact, Geno Auriemma and I went to a Villanova practice. It was a two-a-day on a Saturday. Mitch Bonagura worked out. The kid that went to Temple and had the heart issue, Robert LeBird. Mitch worked him out. Rolly invited us in for hoagies in between the practice sessions. We stayed all day. So Rolly was like, he was always there for Judy and for I. My daughter was 3 years old. She had a gallbladder and a bile duct removed. She had the gallbladder of a 40-year-old woman at the age of 3. Wow. It folded over and folded over, and she had this surgery downtown. She came out of surgery, and they were taking her to intensive care. I walked back to her room. $24 red roses from Rolly Massimino.
Wow.
I was assistant at St. Joe's at the time. St. Joe's hadn't sent me anything. Rolly did.
Wow.
So anybody wants to say, nope, not here. Not with me. Not with me.
How about Fran Dunphy?
Oh my gosh. My first high school road game, I'm coaching Bishop Kenrick High School. Dunphy is the coach at Malvern Prep. And I'm a kid. I don't have anything. And I kneeled down, first play of the game, ripped my pants. Remember when Speedy ripped his pants at the pavilion that time? I did the same thing, first high school game. Coach the game, we lose the game. Now I go in. Now think about this. This is how long ago it was. No cell phones. The only phone is in his athletic director's office, and it's a rotary, like you dial it. And I have to call my wife, and I'll say, Jude, you're not going to believe what happened. Duff never says a word, because he's always been that way. Never says a word. And about 3 weeks ago, we were doing something together. I said, do you remember that? He goes, yeah, I remember it, but I never told anybody anything. He's just he's a guy that can fill a room, a ballroom, a basketball court, or whatever. Everybody in there would say, he's my best friend. He's my best friend. That's an unbelievable gift that he has. And there's not a phony bone in his body with Dumph.
Hey,
And
Chuck.
how about this one? How about this one? He really pissed me off yet the other day. I was talking to the Phillies because we're going to move our coaches versus cancer breakfast to the ballpark. And the guy on the phone's going, well, I guess you're coming Sunday. And I said, Sunday? No, I'll be in San Antonio. And he said, Dumph's throwing out the first pitch. Dodgers, Phillies this weekend in Philadelphia. Dumph's throwing out the first pitch. So I call him. I go, yo, why didn't you tell me? He goes, nah, you know me. I don't say much. And he said, but I did ask the Phillies if they would let Ohtani come up and be in the batter's box.
That's great.
Well, I guess when you're the head coach of 3 of the Big 5 schools, you get the right to throw out a big first pitch.
And a Masters from Villanova.
And a mass, that's correct. Chuck, I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible. I'm going to take your last question to Coach Martelli. And Coach, I'm going to answer it for you. Jim Calhoun. Coach, do you remember that dinner, Hall of Fame dinner in Rochester?
Oh,
Do you mind if I give a 60-second recap?
Please.
Chuck, maybe the most I've ever laughed in a 1,000 person room. The day is for, I think it was a combined Jim Boeheim and Jim Calhoun. They got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Jay Billis and Bill Rafter, the MCs, and Coach Martelli was on the dais. So he comes up and grabs the microphone and just says, look around, folks. We got Hall of Famers everywhere. We got national championship coaches everywhere. And we have me. I mean, I got to tell you, we're sitting there in the VIP room before this whole gala starts. And I don't usually get nervous. I'm usually very comfortable in my skin, but I had to call my wife, Judy, because whenever I get nervous, I call my wife, Judy. She calms me down. And I say, Judy, what do I do? What do I do? Coach Calhoun's won multiple championships. What do I do? I've got to go up and I've got to honor him. And Judy says, well, just do everything Jim Calhoun's doing. And, he's won national championships. He's Hall of Famer. So if you just do everything Jim does, you'll be perfect. Okay, Judy, you're the best. That's why I call you. So now he's at the microphone. He's telling the story and he just says, folks, I can't do Jim Calhoun anymore. And he opens up his suit jacket at the podium and rips out silverware and throws it into the crowd. A napkin, throws it into the crowd. A bottle of red wine and puts it on. And I turn around to Jim Satterlund, coach, a longtime coaches versus cancer guy from up there, and I at St. Bonaventure's, and I said, did he just call Jimmy Calhoun a crook in front of 1,000 people at a Hall of Fame dinner? To me, I mean, I'm still laughing about that every time.
That's hilarious. Last one, Coach, and we'll let you go. You got to give us a good Geno story.
Oh. Well, everybody knows what it is now. But I will say this to you, Chuck. Neither one of us had anything. So on Saturdays, we would go and we would play pickup, play in a park with our players. We'd hang out a little bit. And then at 5 o'clock, we would go to a golf course called Center Square in Norristown because it was $5. It cost $5. You played as long as you wanted. You played as many holes as you could get in that time. And we had nothing. He's a really good player now, but like when people say, well, now you guys have everything, or you got this, or you got, yeah, but we started with nothing. And what he got from his parents was this work ethic second to none. He was going to school when he was my JV coach, going to school, then coming back, practicing, and then stocking shelves at the Acme or whatever. And there were a lot of nights in my house in Norristown when he would sleep on the floor. Like we would go all night and go over every call and and he would give you the shirt off his back, knowing that he didn't have another shirt. And that's the thing that's always like bugged me, because people think he's arrogant and he's this and it's just the Philadelphia way of carrying yourself. And um, he's the kind of guy, Chuck, and I think that you have relationships like this with all of your teammates. You cannot see a guy for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. But when you meet him, I know you. I know that when you pick it up, you pick up the conversation on the last sentence that you said to them 4 months ago.
That's exactly right.
And it's not a big deal to you. It's like, yeah, like, okay, so what have you been up to?
Yeah.
That's who he is. He's not all these wins. He's not. And like, how much longer? I have I have to give you this one other one because we have used his name. The year that Geno was inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame, they fly the people that are being inducted to Indianapolis for the Final Four. And then the next night they go to the women's Final Four. For some reason, he wasn't in the Final Four that year. I don't know what happened. Poor coaching, I guess. He goes to dinner. He has to see Jim Boeheim and I. And we're sitting in a booth in the Westin in Indianapolis. And Geno said, I'm going to take the Oklahoma men's coaching job. Huh? Boeheim like gets out of his seat and gets in there like, are you out of your mind? He goes, no, he goes, I miss this. I miss like when I go to the women's thing, everybody puts me, they don't treat me like just normal, and here would be cool. And Jim Boeheim goes, there's nothing cool about this. Like, you're not doing this. He flies from there to wherever the women's Final Four was. And I went back to the room and I said to my wife, I said, he's taking the Oklahoma men's job. The next night he goes to the women's, they're introduced at the women's thing. Late that night, he calls me. He goes, I'm not going to take it. And I said, man, Boeheim's pretty powerful. But what had happened was his oldest daughter said, look, I'm 23, 24. I'm getting married. Not that we hang out, but we can hang out. But if you go do that, everything you put into UConn, you're going to have to put into that job, and we're never going to see it. And I don't think that's fair. And he called the guy from Oklahoma the next day and said, I'm not doing it. Wow. He was the Oklahoma men's coach for about 36 hours.
Wow. Holy smokes.
Great story, Coach.
Yeah, that's a great one. I've never heard that one. I mean, that's unbelievable. Can you imagine how different it would be? I mean, that's unbelievable. Great. That's a great one. Well, what a good way to wrap it up today, guys. Coach, thank you so much for coming out and hanging with us and sharing your time with us and your stories and everything. It's always good talking to you. I think the last time I saw you was at the Seton Hall game. You were calling the game with my buddy John Fanta.
Seton Hall, Villanova.
Seton Hall, Villanova. That's right. You came running up and gave me a big bear hug. It was great. So thank you very, very much for coming on. We appreciate you. And Mark, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you stepping up as good teammates do, right? And being my wingman for the Big East Rewind tonight. So thank you very much. All right.
And if I could just with this, I thank both of you for your friendship. It means the world to me. And it's just so special. So when I got this invitation, this was an easy yes. And it's because of the friendship. And that's what I never want to lose. This game is meant to give you memories and relationships. So to two of you, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. We appreciate that for sure.
Right back at you, coach, and I love you.
Love you, man.
Yeah, we love you, Coach.
Thank you.
Big East
Appreciate you
Rewind was
guys.
produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Daryl Gurney. Check us out on all things social media by putting Big East Rewind in the search bar. Also, you can catch us on SiriusXM, on the SiriusXM app, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks a lot for joining us. Have a great night, everybody.